for this position.
And what was the highest amount?
I believe the highest amount was like maybe 110 or 112 or something like that.
It didn't make sense to Nikki. She'd worked at this company for 12 years and had been in that position for the last 3, and management often praised her work. She wasn't sure who to turn to for advice. Her mom, who'd passed away, was the only person in her life who had a professional job.
I had people to talk it through about how I felt about it. I didn't have people to talk it through and say, okay, well, here's maybe what you should do next.
Like strategically.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the meeting ends, and then what do?
I don't like causing a stink about things, but it was just like, I might have to cause a stink about this.
Nikki's always felt fortunate to make a decent salary, but she's a single mom who helped put her 2 daughters through college. She hadn't taken a proper vacation in years. There was a giant hole in her kitchen ceiling, and she owed the government more than $65,000 in student debt. She set up a meeting with her boss, made the case for why she deserves a higher salary, and then she waited. Meanwhile, as time passed, she could feel her frustration hardening.
I know this sounds cheesy, but I just didn't think that that sort of thing would ever happen to me or that I would deal with that. And up to that point, I'd had sort of an idyllic view of the organization. I was like, we're family. We're family. And I was like, that was like sort of my very real cue of like, your job is not your family. Your job is not your friends. And I think that felt like a little bit of a betrayal to me.
And when you say that you thought you would never have to deal with that, what do you mean by that?
I think that I thought that I was in a privileged position for a woman of color. Because, here I am. I have this college degree. I have a nice salary job. And I thought that, I'd risen above all of that. And now I'm going to be successful. And it's just like, just not that scenario.
We can't confirm what other factors might have been at play for Nikki. But we know Black women, on average, experience one of the largest pay gaps when compared to their male counterparts. Last year, according to the census, Black women working full-time earned 66 cents for every dollar made by white men. Not long after talking with her boss, Nikki got a promotion, but with no salary increase. She did manage to negotiate a bump, and then about a year later, she got another promotion.
I didn't think, oh, you guys like me, you really like me. Right. It was more like, this is probably what I should have been making the whole time.
Even in the middle of all these promotions, she still felt like there was a lack of transparency, no recognition that she might have been underpaid.
The trust that I had in the organization was kind of gone. I don't trust that I'm going to advance here the way that I would want to or need to. I think I want to start looking for another job.
Nikki applied for a position at another nonprofit to be the director of fundraising and marketing. She landed an interview, and at the end of it, they asked her, "What's your salary expectation?"
I did have to practice that because it was like every time I said it, I would stutter. So I said it very confidently. I said, my salary expectation is 118. And do you know what she said to me?
What did she say?
She said, great, we're going to pay you 127.
No.
And I was just like, oh my gosh.
What? And then you're like, no, just kidding, 150.
Well,
Wow.
Part of me was wondering, like, why, if you knew that, why did you ask me that question?
Trying to name her salary felt like a question on a test she didn't know how to study for. Nikki's been working at this new job for the last 2 years, making more money than she could have ever imagined. She took her daughters on their first true vacation in years and plans to fix that hole in her kitchen ceiling. As your children are getting started in their careers, what do you hope to tell them about how to think of their own value in the workplace?
There's sort of this propensity that I have, and I feel like other people have this propensity to just in general lowball yourself or feel like you have to be the absolute expert at something before you can demand your worth from something. There's not as big of a risk in taking a chance and just asking for what you want as I seem to have perceived there being my whole life.
Sometimes Nikki wonders if she could be making even more money today if she'd started negotiating earlier in life. Who knows? But she's set on helping her daughters, passing down the kind of wisdom she wishes someone would have shared with her. If you want to hear more stories about life and how money messes with it, be sure to check out the Marketplace podcast that I host. It's called This is Uncomfortable. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up,
I think I would like to see less gray hair on my head.
wouldn't we all? But first, let's do the numbers. U.S. markets were closed today for the Thanksgiving holiday. Tomorrow, Black Friday, the markets will have a shortened trading day. The Great Getaway started early, of course, with millions driving and flying to get to their destination. Just short of 80 million of us will drive 50 miles or more, according to AAA. They'll pay an average of $3.07 for a gallon of regular. Last year, it was $3.25 gallon. In New York, where I'm currently hosting, the average is $3.16. Yesterday, TSA screened more than 2,700,000 travelers. TSA is expecting to screen more than 18 million travelers for the period between Tuesday and next Monday. That's an increase of 6% from last year. In Europe, Britain's FTSE was flat and Germany's DAX increased nearly 1%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by the John Templeton Foundation, funding interdisciplinary research and catalyzing conversations to inspire awe and wonder. Dive deeply into the wonders of the universe at templeton.org. And by the full-time Plus Flex MBA program at Indiana University's Kelley School, the only 2-year program of its kind. More at go.iu.edu/KelleyFlex.
Support for WNYC comes from the Yale School of Music, Wednesday, December 4th at 8 p.m. Faculty, fellows, and students present Generations of Music at Yale, featuring chamber music by Chozone, David Lang, Charles Ives, and more. Tickets at carnegiehall.com.
For 100 years, WNYC has been telling the stories of New Yorkers. Now we're asking you to tell us yours. Join our centennial celebration by sharing your New York story. Like that time you turned the corner and saw fill in the blank. Or that life-changing encounter that ended when you got to your subway stop. We'll share select stories on our website, social media, and on the air. Submit yours at wnyc.org/100.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. In the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered, Irish voters weigh in ahead of Friday's election. While the economy is booming, voters say they're not feeling the benefits. We're going to have that and much more at 7 o'clock on WNYC. Stay tuned.
This is Marketplace. I'm Rima Reis. To tackle homelessness, political leaders across the country have touted a seemingly simple solution: build homes for people who don't have them. Better yet, put those homes in places where unhoused folks are already living, in cities, close to public transportation and services. But here's the thing. More and more, insurers are seeing those properties as too risky. Not because of potentially catastrophic storms or wildfires, but because of who lives there in the urban neighborhoods where they're located. KQED's Aaron Baldassari has that story.
2 years ago, Solomon Bukenya's hands were so swollen he could hardly move his fingers. So one day, when he was alone and needed to press a small button on the side of his prosthetic leg to remove it, he says he had no choice but to call 911.
They came, I told them, I can't press this button. Please, can you press it for me? And that's all I wanted to do. Imagine calling 911 for only that small thing.
Bukenya, now 65 years old, had been homeless since about 2007, living in cars and on the street. His health was deteriorating.
I was so weak, my hands, my joints, I couldn't walk.
But early last year, he got permanent housing in downtown San Francisco, where he gets health care and free meals.
I'm feeling more stronger. I'm like a 25-year-old, the way I feel in my body.
Research shows this kind of housing, known in the field as permanent supportive housing, leads not only to positive changes for residents, but to taxpayer savings too. Travis Hamilton is with Episcopal Community Services, which owns and operates Buqueña's building.
It's so much more affordable in comparison to incarceration or long-term hospitalization or literally the cost of one emergency room visit.
The success of this model is a big reason it's grown. Across the country, the number of these supportive apartments have more than doubled over the past decade to over 660,000 units in 2023. But with the new buildings comes new insurance claims, evidence of which was on display at the apartment complex where Buqueña lives.
So unfortunately, there was some water damage, and we do have our elevators out currently.
Hamilton says it can take time for people who've lived outside for a decade or more to reacclimate to apartment life.
Folks take medication or are sleepy, not feeling well, leave the stove burner on, which can cause fires.
It might only be a small stove fire, but water from sprinklers wreaks havoc. And each accident, even minor ones, can cause tens of thousands of dollars in damages. Beth Stokes is the executive director of Episcopal Community Services.
We've had 6 fires over the past 2 years alone. We have had over 7 floods.
As a result, Stokes says insurance premiums for her organization increased 34% over the past year. A mercy compared to other housing providers who've seen premiums more than double, forcing them to dip into operating reserves. Stokes says it's gotten so bad that insurance costs are now an existential threat.
Because a lot of us are deeply concerned, and what we're carrying on our books, we're all very concerned about the sustainability of the model.
Karen Collins with the American Property Casualty Insurance Association says the rise in claims for this kind of housing is piling up on top of other challenges in the industry right now: hurricanes and wildfires, higher rebuilding costs.
All of these combined have resulted in very significant losses in the last few years. And so we are seeing premiums having to increase across the entire U.S.
Unlike other landlords who might pass costs on to tenants, supportive housing providers can't. Rents are capped and subsidized by taxpayers. State insurance commissions are only just beginning to study this problem. Solutions could include a public backstop, similar to federal flood insurance, or just more funding. At Episcopal Community Services, Hamilton says they're already doing what they can by designing buildings with features to prevent damage.
We learned this from a painful lesson at another permanent supportive housing site that timers on stoves are really important.
There are extra drains in the bathroom so water doesn't seep to floors below, and monthly house inspections. If it looks like a resident needs help, Hamilton says there's support.
Hey, what happened? How can we help you prevent these in the future?
Because preventing that next fire or flood might mean keeping the doors open. In San Francisco, I'm Erin Baldessari for Marketplace.
It's that time of the year when friends and family gather to eat, play games, reminisce about the good old days, and, maybe talk about what's on their minds. What if, though, this is something you do pretty much every day, because you run a business with your family? We decided to check back in with Amber and Mallory Pollock, co-owners of Backwards Distilling Company in Casper, Wyoming, at one of their busiest times of the year.
It's been a good year for us overall. Most of the data coming out from sales data recently is indicating that there's some pulling back happening in the alcohol industry, particularly on the off-premise side of things, so people buying, off of liquor store shelves. However, our tasting room sales and everything that we do here on site has been going really well. Costs have been a challenge. We've really tried to hold our prices to try to remain as competitive as we can, but, we've got a proposition of tariffs on the horizon again, which last time that happened, that affected glass, cardboard, aluminum, sort of a lot of the things that we do package in, and I don't think we have a lot of room to further absorb those increases. And so it's likely that we will have to consider a new, pricing structure in the near future. I don't know if Mallory has anything to add.
I think I would like to see less gray hair on my head, but something tells me that being part of a small family business will not allow for that.
Yeah, I don't think it's reversible. We are 10 years in business this week.
This Friday, we're doing a retro menu. We're throwing it back to some drinks that were on our menu years ago. And I just have these this memory of oh my gosh, that drink was so hard to make. And it was so cumbersome. I kind of joke, with staff oh yeah, that frozen drink that took you 3 seconds to make, we used to make those by hand, one by one with an individual little blender. And now it's just, a big production of it. So I think that one is wild for me to see just on a micro level.
Yeah, I think too, when we opened, we had one product. Was one bottle we made vodka, so every drink on the menu was vodka, and that was the only thing we were selling. But I counted it up the other day for a presentation I was giving, and we have put more than 30 products to the market now. To go from just a single product that we were making to have launched all of these different entries into the market, it's really wild. I was going through my phone today and through my social media trying to reach out to folks who have supported us over the years, just to let them know that we're celebrating 10 years and to thank them for whatever it was that they contributed to our success. So it was really a very interesting kind of retrospective look at it. And many of them were or are still regulars, right?
Yeah. We have seen relationships come and go. We've seen first dates turn into engagements. We've had engagements here, we joke when couples split, who's going to get backwards in the divorce? And I think it's very, very special to me to be able to witness that and see just how far we've come over the past 10 years.
That's Amber and Mallory Pollock, co-owners of Backwards Distilling Company over in Casper, Wyoming.
Marketplace is supported by Babbel for Business. Babbel's professional language learning platform offers practical and industry-specific language courses designed for faster, better learning and a more culturally inclusive workforce. Learn more at babbelforbusiness.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
This final note on the way out. Australia just became the first country to ban social media for children, specifically those under 16. Lawmakers say the legislation is to help protect their mental health. You might be wondering, okay, but how exactly will it be enforced? The legislation does not make that clear, but platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and the likes, they'll have a year to meet the requirements. Otherwise, the law says they'll be liable for fines of up to $33 million. John Buckley, John Gordon, Noya Carr, Diantha Parker, Amanda Peacher, and Stephanie Seek are the Marketplace editing staff. Amir Babawi is the managing editor. And I'm Rima Reis. We'll be back tomorrow. This is APM.